Welcome back, Sebastian here. So really exciting qualifying session for the Japanese Grand Prix. So we'll get started right away. So Q1, very strong wind at the start, which I thought had a chance to catch some of the drivers out. So the drivers were going to have to be careful around a circuit that's already very tricky and a pretty difficult track to learn. Verstappen was very strong through practice. We topped all three sessions, and he was really the favorite for pole going into it. So really making it look like Singapore was a one-off weekend for the team. Going through the first runs, about half the drivers had completed their first runs, and then we get our big crash of the day. Logan Sargent crashing at the final corner. Basically, he kind of had a bit of a moment, had a bit of an oversteer moment on the exit of that corner, tried to keep the foot in, and he basically went off course, went in the grass, and continued into the wall. Really silly mistake. Really should have just took his foot off the gas and braked and kept the car on the road instead of trying to hold it in. But it's a really costly mistake for the team, and for him, he'll be starting P20 tomorrow at best. Ferrari decide to go out in the gap right after the red flag comes out, as they were one of the few teams who did not set a lap before Sargent's crash. The Sargent crash also caused a red flag, ruining laps for quite a few teams, including the Ferrari. But that being said, Ferrari had a pretty good time, and they were able to easily get into Q2. So for the final runs in Q1, Ferrari, Norris, and Verstappen don't go out, and all the other cars go out for the final runs. Zhou has a bit of excursion in the gravel, and he gets knocked out into Q1. Said he was blocked by an AlphaTauri. Didn't really see it on the camera, but it's possible. So our 5 drivers knocked out in Q1 are Sargent, Zhou, Hülkenberg, Stroll, and Bottas. So obviously Sargent knocked out, didn't set a time. Tough for Stroll. He really needs to have a good result both in qualifying and the race, and this was not a good start. Hülkenberg, a bit of a surprise being out-qualified by Magnussen. He's looked very good against Magnussen all year in qualifying, so a bit of a surprise there. And for the Alfa Romeos, a bit disappointing for them. They looked really good in practice, especially practice this morning, and I thought they might have had an outside chance of getting into Q3, and looked like a good chance of getting into Q2 as well. So into Q2 we go. First runs, the Mercedes are 1.1 seconds off of Verstappen's benchmark time. The McLarens were looking really good through sectors 1, sector 2, the ones where it has a lot more corners, require a lot more downforce, but they're losing a lot of time in sector 3, showing how much extra drag that car has, and really showing that that's their biggest limitation this year. After the first runs, the drivers in the bottom 5 were Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Albon, Magnussen after the first runs. Albon decides to go in the gap, and he goes 7th, which is a decent result, although his engineer came on the radio saying that track evolution would be about 2 to 3 tenths, meaning that he would need quite a few drivers behind him to have pretty poor final laps in order to get in. So we do the final runs for Q2, and as it turns out, Lawson, Gasly, Albon, Ocon, and Magnussen are the 5 drivers out. The gap between P10, who I believe was Alonso, and P14, who was Ocon, very, very tight, about a tenth and a half, and Lawson, who qualified 11th, missed out on Q3 by about 0.04 of a second, so very, very close there. Q3, Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri I felt were favorites for pole. The McLarens had looked fairly close through some of the running, but reality is that Verstappen was the heavy favorite, and he really showed us why that first run. He put his foot down, 1:29.012, with Perez 1.4 seconds behind, and Piastri, the closest driver to Verstappen after the first runs, 0.446 off, so about 4.5 tenths off, not really close. Verstappen basically just getting another gear, and really separating himself from the rest of the pack. Ferrari basically have to go for one fast lap. I assume that when they wasted a set of tires in Q1 doing their extra run plan because of their runs that got aborted. So unfortunately for them, they were going for one fast lap only. Go to the final laps in Q1. Verstappen, purple sector 1, purple sector 2, purple sector 3, improves on his time of 1:28.877, I believe. to take pole by 0.581. The McLarens behind weren't able to really improve their laps. They both set lap times that are a little bit slower. So it means that Piastri gets his first front row in Formula One. I know we got a front row in the sprint in Belgium, but that doesn't really count in the official records. So great result for him, really showing, I think, how much he's developed as a driver through his first season already. So just taking a look at the grid right now before I kind of go over my 3 big talking points from qualifying today. So obviously Verstappen on pole tomorrow, Piastri second, Norris third, so making that a McLaren 2-3. Fourth Leclerc, fifth Perez, rebounded nicely, second running Q3, closed the gap up to about 7/10, which is still not great. Sixth Sainz, seventh Hamilton, eighth Russell, ninth Tsunoda, great for him getting into Q3 at his home race. 10th Alonso, big struggles for Aston Martin this weekend, being out-qualified by an Alpha Tauri. 11th Lawson, 12th Gasly, 13th Albon, 14th Ocon, 15th Magnussen, 16th Bottas, 17th Stroll, 18th Hulkenberg, 19th Zhou, and of course 20th Logan Sargent. So my 3 things, something new that I'm doing, and try 3 big talking points from qualifying. I think the first one would be Red Bull one-off. So I think really with this result today, I think it really kind of confirms that the result that we had in Singapore was a one-off, just a track that just did not work with the Red Bull car. And you know, that's absolutely fine to have a track that just doesn't work with your car if it means destroying everyone the other 21 races. Number 2, Sargent, question mark. So for Sargent, you know, he's crashed quite a few times the last several races. And I think the repair bills are definitely going to be piling up at this point. And something that, you know, it really hurt Mick Schumacher last year and was contributed to him kind of being fired from F1 last year. And, you know, at this point, I think with how many crashes he's had, the lack of improvement, you know, I talked about this in my video a couple weeks ago, but, you know, it's definitely not what he needs to be doing if he wants to retain his seat. And number 3, McLaren speed. I'll just write that because I don't have space to write resurgence. But for McLaren, excellent result, one of their best qualifying results of the year, if not the best one. 2-3 in qualifying is an excellent result. I do believe British Grand Prix, they also got 2-3. But yeah, nonetheless, really good result for McLaren, not one I was expecting, especially with some of the long straights, going from like Spoon all the way down to the final chicane as well. That being said, should set us up for a pretty exciting race. Again, with this result, I think Verstappen's heavy favorite for the win, but for the podium, the battle for the podium position should be pretty interesting between McLaren's, Perez, and the Ferraris, and I wouldn't discount the Mercedes as well, especially since generally, historically, with Lewis Hamilton, the race pace has been pretty good. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again tomorrow with a review for the 2023 Japanese Grand Prix.